Hey everybody, and welcome back for another game night date night. And I'm just gonna start again. Holy shit! Hey everybody, and welcome back to Game Night Date Night. This video series is in collaboration with Games and Couples that do couple counseling, utilizing a lot of board games as a tool to help couple connect. And what's the great with that too is they've created a rating system that'll help couples figure out which game would suit them best. Now keep in mind, in this rating system, 1 is not bad, 5 is not good. It just depends on where you are as a couple. The first thing that they rate on is conversation and connection potential. How much opportunity is there while playing the game to hold a conversation? Some games, there's just a lot going on. You really got to stay focused on the game, that there's really very little opportunity to have a conversation as you're playing. While other game, it's more mellow. There's, like you're doing your thing, but there's a lot of opportunity to have a conversation. And depending on where you're at as a couple, maybe it's the end of the day and that's when you guys connect. So having the opportunity for conversation, what's really what you're looking for. Or maybe things have been tense, conversation tends to flare up, so you're looking for something that's a little bit on the lower side. The other thing that they rate on is the getting to know you. How revealing will the game that you play be? Will you learn a lot from your partner as you play? Some games, definitely it's almost like this is a game about learning of the other person that you're playing. While other things is, more kind of side play. You do your own thing on your board, they do their own thing on their board, and then you just kind of compare points at the end, so it's not quite as revealing. And the last thing that is rated on is potential for hurt feelings and conflict. Let's face it, in a lot of games, the goal is to become the winners. That means it has to be a loser. And depending on how the game does that, it could have a lot of take that element, kind of have the chance of creating a lot of potential conflict. But then maybe you're looking at conflict resolution, and this is a good control way of dealing with that. So every week on Games and Couples, we will talk about a new game of the week. And I try to have a theme every month. So for the month of September, back to school, I try to concentrate on games that had to do with books or school or combination of both. So the first one that we talked about this month was Arcane Academy. This is a game I've owned a long time, and it's a very interesting one. Everybody has a player board. You're collecting spells. You're in a wizard school, and you have homework to do. You got spells to learn, and eventually in the cards you'll have like a times up card or put your pencil down card. I forget what it's called, but that's basically when that's it. The test is over, and hopefully you've scored enough. So let's look at the rating system on this one. I've given this one for conversation and conversation potential a 3 out of 5. Mainly, you're drawing tiles. You got to decide where they're going to go. You have the cards that you can purchase. There's not so much going on that you can't have a conversation, but you will probably end up being kind of trying to puzzle out where the best place to place your tile is going to be, so that maybe you're not kind of fully committed to a conversation, but you can definitely hold a light conversation while playing this game. Getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5 as well. You're going to be concentrating mostly on your board, but it's interesting to see what your partner is going for, what kind of connection they're trying to do, which card they're trying to acquire as well, kind of what their strategy is overall, and what makes them kind of go that way. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 5. As I mentioned, you are concentrating on your own board. They're concentrating on their own board. It's where the cards are involved. If you're trying to work on a card and then that they take it, or some of the cards will have take that element where it directly affects your own gameplay, and that can sometimes get a little bit frustrating. So this is what the game looks like, Arcane Academy. And then there's all the components. So you have the player board that has these different locations. Some of them are pre-populated, so you start with a few things on your board. You have a little dial that keeps track of your knowledge, and then you have the gems that you'll be collecting as well, and you'll be spending those to acquire the different cards. And the different cards will be worth different points. They'll give you different abilities as well. And you'll notice each of the tile have a little kind of half circle depending on the different connections. So because you on your turn add a tile to your board, or you can activate the tile, and if you activate the tile you get what's on that tile, but you also get to collect what's on the other tiles that have a shared connection. So you're trying to connect your spells, I guess, as best as possible so that you can collect the most. Now, when a tile has been spent, you're kind of marked that it's been used up, and you can't activate it again until you clear your board. It's just a neat, interesting game. I really enjoyed this one. The next one that we talked about is the Big Book of Madness. Again, this one is a wizard school. There's a lot of wizard school, and there's this forbidden book that you are not supposed to have anything to do with it. And a group of students open the book, releasing bunch of mayhem and monsters. And this is a cooperative game, and you're trying to close the book before you get caught. But in order to close the book, you've got to defeat the monsters on each page. So it's an interesting game. It's a very interesting theme as well. So let's have a look at the rating on this one. Conversation and connection potential, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5. This is you'll have different elements, and then each player will have kind of more of a certain element. It kind of has a bit of a deck building, but you can also set cards that'll be available for the other players on their turn. So there's a lot that kind of gets considered. But if you really wanted to, you could kind of go at a slower pace and hold a light conversation as you're playing this game. But you're going to be concentrating on the game a fair bit, so you couldn't have like a huge conversation while playing this game. Getting to know you, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5 as well. It's simple decision. What card do you keep? What card do you make available for the other players? And being that it's a cooperative game, you can kind of discuss this with everybody. So you would kind of get a sense of how people are thinking when they're making the decision. But there's not tons and tons of decisions to make really in this game. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 1 out of 5 because it is a cooperative game. Everybody's playing with the same goal in mind. And this is what the Big Book of Madness looks like. It's a game by Yellow. And here's a better look of all the components. So you have the main board. You have the top, and it's really interesting because at the top you build your book. So every time you play it's going to be a little bit different. But you have the top card that is the book cover, and then you kind of add the different monster card that you're going to deal with, and the bottom card is the bottom of the book. So you start by flipping. So every turn you're going to flip a card, and then you kind of go through, and if you were able to kind of defeat the monster or not, then you get to go to the next page. Then you have the different characters. Every characters have their starting deck that'll have the different elements, and each card is going to require a certain amount of element in order to be defeated. So you're trying to kind of get all of the things that you need to do kind of cleared to be able to pass through. Now, if you're successful, I think there's a reward, but if you're not successful, there's a penalty that you'll have to deal with. The next game that we talked about this month is Alma Mater. And this one we're actually walking away from the wizard theme here. This is really, you're running a university. It's a heavier game, as in this game probably has a higher complexity compared to the other ones I've talked about this month. It's a worker placement game, and you're collecting books, and each player kind of produces their own book. So if you want to produce books of your own color, and then you want to have the other players purchase your books if they because then you get they have to pay you for that, so you get the reward for that. And then there's like one other location, because you're running a university, so you have to hire professors, but you also have to enroll students. It's a very interesting. The components are super cool. If you look at just these little plastic books, they're adorable. I bought this game really probably on the books alone, but let's have a look at the rating. So conversation and connection potential, it's a 3 out of 5. This is more of a Euro game, so it's a bit of a slower pace type of game. You don't get the the angst is like, oh my god, we got to make it through this. So it tends to be a little bit of a slow pace, so you could hold a conversation. But being a Euro game, there's a lot more to consider, so you're kind of really have to pay attention to what's happening on the board. Getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. There is a lot going on in here. It's really interesting to see what people are going to concentrate on. Are they going to concentrate on getting the professors? Are they going to concentrate on getting enrolling the students? And then there's this track that you can try to go up, and then you get better abilities the higher you go, and the more points the higher you go. It's just interesting to see what decision is going to be made, just because there's a lot more decisions to be made. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 5. It's a worker placement, so somebody might go into a spot that you were hoping to go to. Other than that, it doesn't really directly affect you. There is the professor location, so the first person to go there gets to put the books in, like, it'll tell you how many books is required for that professor, and then you kind of put the books down, and that's their cost to hire them. And the first person to get to that professor sets the price for, because multiple people can get the same professor, but now they've got to pay the price that you've set. So you're gonna force them to buy your books to get access. So you would put like that on the top. It's just an interesting game. But yeah, so there's some potential for like a little bit of frustration in the game, but this isn't by any means a take that game. Here's what the game of Alma Mater looks like. It's it's a beautiful box, but it's definitely more of a serious looking game than the other ones have been. This is just kind of a quick overview of what it looks like. So there's the main board, and right now there aren't really any cards really set on there. So you got the main board, that's where you're going to be placing your worker, and then you got each player board. This is where you'll be generating the books, and kind of some of the students and professors that you acquire are going to be added on there. And I wanted to show you these, like those little book bits. They're just so adorable. So it's a little plastic, and you can tell by looking at it that it is a book. So each player has their own colored book that they'll be generating, and then you have the yellow book, which are encyclopedias, and they're a lot more difficult to acquire, so they have a higher value as well. And then on the top of the board there, depending on where you're ranking in points as to which book is more valuable, so you're trying to get your books to be worth more. It's just a very interesting game. And then the next one that we talked about was Miskatonic University. So now this is more on the spooky theme. So you are a professor in a university, and there is a forbidden library, but something's been released, and you're enrolling some of the students trying to get this under control so that you can get tenure at the university. Some students may or may not make it, but I guess that's not your main concern here. This is a really interesting push your luck game. You're trying to create sets, and then if you ever, and so you're playing this in every round, and every round there's a card that'll be worth a certain amount of points, and then there's other sanity cards, I think they're called, that are going to be lower points. And you're trying to be the person that's in the library the longest so that you can go and collect the highest points of card, because the first one out has to take the lowest point. You're going to be drawing cards. Someone's going to build that kind of sigil, that symbol, and that's made between 3 cards. So if you ever get that done, that'll give you an ability. You have the grimoire you're trying to put together. So there's 5 different symbols that you're trying to get. Now, if you ever get a duplicate, it kind of forces you out of the library. And then you have a space where you can acquire the students, and then if you ever get 4, you can discard them. I think they just go insane. And it kind of gives you some of your ability cards again, because you have different abilities that you can activate each round, but once they're activated, they've been spent unless you can flip them back up. It's an interesting, kind of darker themed game, but it's been neat to play with that push your luck element to it. This is what the box looks like, and it is shaped as a book. So it's a really cool. It has like that magnet closure. It's a really neat book. I keep saying book, but it's a really neat box. It looks cool. It's kind of has great quality to the box itself. And then we have a bit of a kind of broader view of what everything that looks like. So we all have a little player board, which is a desk. So this is your desk that you have, that, and then it has little notches kind of to show where you would put the different cards that you'll be collecting. And just kind of get a little bit of a closer look. So you got the students, that kind of looks like old newspaper type documents. You got the grimoire with the symbols on it, and now you're trying to get the different five, and then the main symbol on the bottom that you're trying to create. It's an interesting push your luck game, as I mentioned, with a bit of a darker theme. And then the last game that we talked about this month is Biblios. Biblios is a very interesting game. So in this one is you are running a monastery and you're trying to have the best library. So you got to acquire the ink, you got to acquire kind of the skills and have your scribes kind of reproduce these games. You're going to have like holy tomes and then manuscripts and then forbidden books. And you're just trying to collect sets of each of those, and you're not going to be able to have the most of everything, but you're trying to have the most of certain sections, and you're trying to have those be worth the more points. And this game plays over 2 rounds. So the first round will be the gift phase, where if you're playing a 2-player game, you're going to draw 3 cards, but you don't draw them all at once. You draw one, and you're going to have to decide, am I giving this one to myself or to the other player, or am I putting this to be bid for at the end of the round, or at the end of like the first phase? So I'd be like, well, I mean, it's not bad. It's not a bad card. I do want to have some of the blue cards, but it's not a very high valued one. I don't really want to give that to them, but I don't want to keep it in case there's better cards coming, so I'll put that in the auction. And then you draw the next one, and it's a gold coin. Well, it's only one single gold coin, so I'll give that to the other player, and you draw the next one, and it's another gold coin. It's like, oh, great, I didn't get all that much. But so you don't know, it has very interesting decisions as like, do I take this now, or is something better coming up, or could it be coming up? And you're going to be doing that. So you're going to be collecting different colored cards and then gold as well. In the second phase, you're going to go through the cards and flip them up, and you're going to take turn bidding the gold that you've collected in the first round to purchase the cards that are in the bidding pile. And once the bidding is done, you kind of gather everything, and then you'll kind of see which one you have the most of. Now, another card that is available is the church cards, and the church card will be like +1 or -1, and it allows you to affect the value of the different categories. So it'd be like, well, I'm kind of starting to get a lot of green, so I'm going to make green go up by 1. So everything starts with a 3. And that's one thing I want to point out. These dice are gorgeous. They're bright, they're interesting colors, and they're like big chunky dice, and you don't ever roll them. They all start at 3, and then you move them up and down depending on these church cards that you would get. So they're just trackers. You don't actually get to roll them, but it's just a neat game. So I didn't go over the rating here. So conversation, connection, potential, I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. There is some decisions happening, but all of that is happening in your head because you're kind of keeping it secret. You're not going to be like, oh, I have a gold. Well, I don't know. I'm going to, you're keeping that secret. So, and it's fairly simple decision. Do you keep? Do you give to the other player? Do you put in the thing? So it's only a couple of options, but sometimes it can get a little bit tricky. But that being said, because it's fairly simple decisions, there's a lot of opportunity to hold a conversation as you play. Getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5. Again, because this is kept secret, you're not going to reveal what you're going for. It's just at the end, it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize you had collected so much blue, and then it's like, and you don't know what their decision process has been just because it's kept secret. So it's not a game that's going to reveal a whole lot. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 5. You don't know what they're deciding as they're going through the first phase. In the second phase, it can be frustrating if they just keep outbidding you, but eventually they're going to run out of gold, right? So that's the rating for Biblios. So this is what the game looks like. This is another one that's kind of front opens up and then in the shape of a book. Another great box. It looks great. And another game by Yellow. And then there's just a bit of a closer look. So you have like these dice are so gorgeous. I love them. You almost want to roll them. It's too bad that you don't. But so they all start at 3, and then you can affect the value of the different categories as you get the cards. And then this is just a closer look at the different cards. So you'll have some that's the pigment, some that'll be the different kind of books, and then the gold. And then you have at the very end there the church cards that allow you to increase the value of a category or decrease the value of a category. It's just a very neat, fun, simple game. It's a simple game to play, simple game to teach, but it's just one that's easy to get to the table. So that was it for this month. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. My Instagram is Mels_boardgame_room, and we also have Games and Couples. And I'll be sure to put the links below. And then on Facebook, my Facebook page is Mel's Board Game Room, and we also have Games and Couples, Love in the Age of Board Game, as well as our YouTube channel, Mel's Board Game Room and Games and Couple, Love in the Age of Board Game. Bye, everybody.